We are in Sapporo, Japan, where the G7 Ministers of Energy and Environment recently concluded their two-day meeting. The principal theme of their talks was a collective commitment to accelerating the transition to cleaner and renewable energy sources. This commitment was restated during the meeting, and a 36-page communiqué was issued containing the commitments and underlying strategies of each of the G7 nations to diminishing their emission levels. At the core of this plan is a shared recognition of the current global energy crisis and economic disruption, and a pledge to reach net zero carbon emissions by the year 2050 at the latest. This is a significant accomplishment, as the G7 nations represent 40% of the world's economic activity and a quarter of worldwide carbon emissions. The overall plan set out by the G7 ministers call for an end to new unabated coal-fired power plants, referred to as predominantly decarbonized power sector, by 2035. This stipulation is a major step forward, as it implies phasing out the use of coal-fired power plants without measures to capture the emissions. U.S. Special Presidential Envoy for Climate John Kerry called the meetings really constructive and stated that the unity of the goal, phasing out unabated fossil fuels, is a very important step towards global climate action. The call to action by the G7 members is particularly significant as it comes at a time when developing countries, especially China and Brazil, are becoming increasingly vocal about the need for help in transitioning away from fossil fuels and stabilizing energy prices and supplies. The G7 is being asked to increase financial support for these developing countries so that they have access to the same renewable energy resources and technologies as the G7 nations. The G7 energy and environment ministers agree that economic development is the first defense against climate change and are vowing to continue to support and provide less developed countries with adequate finance to lead the transition towards clean energy taxation. However, some critics contend that the G7 communiqué falls short of the clarion call to action that is urgently needed to address the scale of the climate crisis. Though the road ahead is still long and winding, the G7 Ministers of Energy and Environment have recommitted to pursuing an ambitious collective action plan to reducing global carbon emissions. Hopefully, through the commitment and collaboration of these nations, the world will be able to attain a just and sustainable future for our planet.